scrapping, not strengthening the Rwanda deterrent, and solving illegal migration by redefining it as irregular migration. Because they don't believe in deterring people from illegally coming into our country. They've reversed some of the changes that I fought relentlessly for to reduce legal migration, because they believe in mass migration. Mass migration must end. It won't be plain sailing, but we must do it. To boost the wages of working people and reinvest in our own economy, to prevent the further erosion of social trust and cohesion, to ease pressure on our housing stock. We would have to be building a new home every 5 minutes, 365 days a year, just to build enough homes for the new arrivals as a result of migration, before we even start to build the homes for young people they deserve. And there are people and places that Westminster finds it very easy to forget. The white working class boys being failed, who are falling behind in their exams. The proud towns and smaller cities, often far from London, like the one I grew up in Wolverhampton. They're in need of more than just a lick of paint right now. The social contract of our country has frayed. It is in danger of breaking. Our public institutions are being captured by a small minority of people with extreme views on gender, on identity, and our history. And our society, which is so precious, is becoming less cohesive, unnecessarily dividing our country by condemning the riots, but with selectivity and squeamishness. We need a new politics that can rise to this moment. Not a man who twice campaigned to make a Putin-appeasing, Iran-loving, Hamas-sympathizing threat to our prosperity and our national security, the Prime Minister of this country. Keir Starmer took down a portrait of Margaret Thatcher the other day, didn't he? And he told a friend that he took down Thatcher's portrait because he found working in front of it, and I quote, unsettling. Well, if I was unpicking her legacy and plunging Britain back to the 1970s, I'd find working in front of her portrait pretty unsettling too. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that portrait is a daily reminder to him of the Prime Minister that he cannot and will never be. Appeasing the train drivers with a £10,000 a year pay rise, only for them to pocket the money and then say they're going to go back on strike 2 days later. Now, Keir Starmer, he thinks that the answer is ever higher taxes, more regulation, more borrowing. Now, do you remember? There was a time when Ed Miliband promised to install the Edstone in Downing Street. It was grey. It was inflexible. It was full of empty promises. Well, he finally got what he wanted, didn't he? He got it in Keir Starmer. Is that Labour's inability to tackle these challenges has already become painfully apparent. These facts lead to a simple conclusion, that our party, for all its flaws, for all its failings, our party remains our country's best hope. And I'm standing to be leader of our party because I believe that I can unite us. I can unite us around the change that we need. Thank you. Well, that was the easy part. Now we have a few questions. So I'm going to go to Sky, I think, in the first instance, and we have Matthew from Sky News. Hi, Matthew.
Well, Sky News. Hi, Robert. You talked about trust and confidence. One of the most pressing challenges you'll face should you become leader of the Conservative Party is countering Labour's narrative that the inheritance was a disaster, all the pain is your fault. So my question is, how do you do that? And how do you do it more effectively than Labour managed in opposition when Cameron and Osborne pulled the same trick? I think you just called it the Ed Miliband approach.
Well, look, the first thing we have to do is fiercely defend the things we got right. We've just left the fastest growing economy in the G7. We delivered a decade of low unemployment. Our children are now the most literate and numerate in the Western world as a result of the reforms we did to our schools. I will always fiercely defend the things we got right. We must, as I said, also be clear about what we got wrong and be painfully honest as the beginning of regaining the trust and the confidence of the British public. But we've also got a socket to Keir Starmer and to Rachel Reeves, because they stood on a platform of a read my lips, no new taxes manifesto. And here we are, 7 weeks later, just 7 weeks later, they are preparing the ground to raise your taxes. And why? Not because we left a black hole in the public finances. They've created the black hole in the public finances because they've chosen to give £10 billion to their trade union paymasters. And they've given £8 billion to Ed Miliband to produce an energy company that doesn't produce any energy. These are bad choices. These are selfish choices. They are going to raise your taxes. They are removing the winter fuel allowance from 10 million pensioners because of those choices. That's what I will do. I will make sure that we are holding Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves to account every day. And that work begins tomorrow when we get back to Parliament. Now, thank you very much. Now we've got Jack from The Sun. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Robert. Thank you very much. Jack Elson from The Sun. On a similar theme, having pledged not to raise taxes on working people during the election, Labour is now opening the door to hiking fuel duty at the budget. Would a Tory party under your leadership oppose this? And just quickly, as you mentioned, this could be one of the most seismic budgets in recent times. Is it therefore not a bit of an own goal to have Rishi Sunak responding to it? Should this contest not be shortened so that yourself or one of your other candidates can respond?
Well, look, I don't make the rules of the contest, and so that is out of my hands. But look, everyone in this room should know I'm ready to go on day one. So whenever that time is, I will be there at the dispatch box holding Keir Starmer to account. But on your point about fuel duty, look, we pay some of the highest prices in the world for our fuel duty. And when I was a minister in the Treasury, I froze fuel duty. I supported the Sun's campaign at every budget that I was involved in, and I would support it again in the future. Because my Conservative Party is the working people's party. And not everyone in this country can catch a train or the London Underground. People need their cars. They need their vans. My dad drove a white van. We need to back those people and ensure that they can afford the cost of living. This is another sign of how out of touch Keir Starmer is. It is a direct attack on motorists. We need to stop. We need to fight it as much as we can. So thank you. Now, we've got Amy from The Telegraph. Hi, Amy.
Thank you, Robert. Hi, Amy Gibbons from The Telegraph. I'm interested in hearing a bit more about your fiscal policy. You've previously said inheritance tax is fundamentally unfair. So do you stand by that view, and will you campaign to scrap the tax if you're made Tory leader? And just quickly, for now you're aiming to be leader of the opposition, but can you see yourself as Prime Minister in, say, 5 years?
Well, no one should be standing for this job unless they want to be the Prime Minister of this country. So, and I think you can see that from the moment I started this campaign, I have worked day and night. I have crisscrossed this country. I've met thousands of people. I would not be doing that unless I believed in my core that we can win the next general election. And that is what I will seek to do if I'm lucky enough to lead this party, so that we can get back into government. We can kick out Keir Starmer. We can consign this to a one-term Labour government, and we can get back to leading this country in the right direction. But as for your question about taxes, look, I want taxes to be lower. The tax burden is too high in this country. We've got to ensure that we get growth going again in this country. And of course, there's a role for dynamic taxes in that. But as I've also said, we've got to get supply-side reforms going. We've got to build homes in the cities, not slash the targets like Labour are doing. We've got to get cheap and reliable energy going. We've got to give our young people real skills, not low-value degrees. These are the things that I would do if I was lucky enough to lead this country. Now, I've got the last question is from The Times. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm Shema back from The Times. Last weekend, we obviously saw Notting Hill Carnival take place, and there were several stabbings, 2 of which have now sadly resulted in the deaths of a mother and a chef. What do you think of the government's response to the events that happened?
Well, I think firstly, we need to back the police. because the police have a very difficult job to do. And the tragic deaths and serious injuries that we saw were also coupled by assaults on our police officers. And we need to be supporting them as much as we can. Look, you know my views. I think that we have to be investing more in our police. We need to be backing them. We need to ensure the police are enforcing our laws without fear or favour and keeping our streets safe. I want to be building more prisons and locking up more prolific offenders. Those are the things that I would do if I was lucky enough to lead this party and ultimately our country. Nothing is more important to me than keeping our streets safe for my children and for people across this whole country. Thank you very much. Right, very good. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. This is the most energetic, the most dynamic campaign in British politics today. We're going to move forward. We're going to keep crisscrossing the country. I look forward to seeing you all in the days and the weeks ahead. Thank you very much. Great to see you. Thank you.